This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Quiet Professional. As we approach Remembrance Day, I'm continuing with our series on service and sacrifice. I've got several guests lined up to talk about their experiences, the memories, the people, and the impacts of service. I've also got my American co-host here for this one, John Simpson. He is a veteran of the U.S. Army with over 40 years as a sniper instructor. He's an instructor with Snipercraft Incorporated now, and a research historian, one of the best, if I may say so. He's authored several books on the fundamentals and advanced tactics of marksmanship and sniper skills. And our guest today is Kathy Fleser. She is married to William Bill Fleser, who was one of the guests of last year's Remembrance Day series. Kathy has her own story of service and spent most of her career as a registered nurse. She spent a lot of time traveling with Bill as his career took them to several locations. Kathy maintained a work-life balance and raised two children, Corey and Ben. And now she is here to talk about the life of a military spouse. So welcome to you two.
Hello.
Hey, I'm glad to have you both on here. As we were saying just before we started recording, this is kind of a new angle we're doing because I think this is the third year I've been doing this now. I'm just kind of losing track. But it's always with people who've been in the deployments or been in the service. And for this year, we're thinking, why didn't we talk to some of the spouses, some of the people who were at home or traveling, and what that part of service was like? So I'm happy to have you here, Kathy.
Well, thank you. I hope I can add something to this.
I'm sure you'll do a good job. You know what? One of the things we do when we first start is just kind of talking about the guest and learning a bit about you. So I'm wondering if you could just give us a little background on yourself and kind of flow into any sort of family history when it comes to military service or in the armed forces and what that was like for you.
Sure, no problem. My dad was in the Navy, but that was before I was around because it was Korea. And so as far as, military home style, we never had that. And I didn't know a whole lot until I met Bill, which happened to be the first day of college. He was giving me grief about looking like a jock going to a softball game. And so then, hanging out with him and all that, that's where I got any kind of military knowledge background. But, as far as that, no, because my family has no clue about our lifestyle. They don't understand it because nobody's ever lived it.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of unique, actually, at least for Americans. It seems like everybody always has some sort of family history, and there's medals on the wall, or they've got some exposure to it. So
just my dad in the Navy, but nobody. It was before my parents were married, actually.
Okay. And so once he was done that, did he even talk about it at home? Was it a thing?
My dad would give us some stories about the destroyer he was on, and the kids loved the one where he snuck into the Marines when he was 16, and his name was written in Polish. And they're going through the roster and stuff at formation, and they called him. It was the way it was spelled because it was CZSLAW, and they called him, Chester Coleslaw because he couldn't pronounce it. And so the kids called him Jaji Coleslaw all the time because Jaji's Polish for grandpa. That's one of their favorite stories. And then they kicked him out and he came back in when he was of age.
Okay.
When they figured that out. Yeah, he came back into the Navy.
Did he ever, when they're talking about their experiences, did he ever say whether he kind of agreed with service or didn't agree with it? Or, did anything kind of color your opinion as you're growing up of someone in the lifestyle or in that service?
No, not at all. Because if I couldn't put the money together for college, I was going to go into the Navy,
Oh, really?
military service. Yeah, that was my. I never considered the Army. I was like the first, and of course, our counselors, not being the brightest, mentioned nothing about the military academies opening up to women that year.
Hmm.
Because I graduated from high school in '76, and that was the first year women were admitted to the academies. And
Okay.
so I never knew of that option. The a good friend of ours, he was an ROTC instructor at Central Michigan, where Bill and I were. He wanted me in bad, but I didn't need the money, so I didn't go in that direction. I'd won a scholarship, and I'm like, nah, don't need it.
Yeah.
And at the time, and Bill and I were talking about, the future and stuff. I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I think that was before joint domicile was really a thing, and then as we found out, joint domicile didn't work well with officers. It worked better with enlisted. They tried to match them,
Okay.
station them better than they did with officers, because we have friends who would spend every other tour apart.
Oh,
So,
okay. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, when I was listening back to Bill's episode, so I think he said he was in the Army. He started in 1975.
Yeah, as far as his college, it's when he signed his scholarship. Yeah.
So, and you were together at that time.
I had met him in '76 when I arrived in college.
What kind of was your first impression of somebody in the military?
He's kind of geeky.
Kind of.
He was kind of geeky, and it was an interesting group of people in ROTC at that time. But there were some good people there. There were some geeky people, but it was a fun group. We had a lot of fun. They're very driven, I would say. And unfortunately, many of the people didn't even make it past commissioning for some reason or another. Which I was kind of surprised at. But a lot of the women, because there was only a few women in the program at the time, and I think really the first commissioning class was 77 or 78 of women. So yeah, it was a slow go at the start. It's such a big program now; it amazes me.
Yeah. Well, and how many would have been going? Do you know the rough number? How many would have been going through at this time? How many were in the class?
I would say there were probably maybe about 20 total in there.
Oh, wow.
So it was small in comparison to the ROTC classes now, and the kids, especially after the war started. We were up there visiting, and the program, and then we still get the newsletters and stuff and the program is huge now. So yeah, things have changed a lot. Of course, this is all post-Vietnam stuff, and people are, weren't getting good vibes for doing any kind of military service at the time. So, it took a while.
Well, and that's one of the things I kind of wanted to ask about was just given the timelines. So, there's some people who aren't very favorable to being in service at this time. Vietnam is just wrapped up. Did that have any impact on how you viewed things, or were you kind of just like that didn't really affect you, didn't come into play?
No, we had been probably about 4 years post a lot of the Vietnam stuff. So there wasn't anybody protesting against ROTC on campus or any of that. And so it wasn't too bad. I have talked to people where they were protesting outside of the ROTC and all this stuff like that. But no, we didn't experience any of that during our time there.
While you're now you're together with Bill, is there any expectations that you have? Are you just kind of along for the ride? You're like, I'm good to travel wherever this takes us?
Yeah, that was pretty much mine. I was not, I was okay to get out of Michigan. That I was, I was glad that he did trade his first assignment from Fort Dix, New Jersey to Fort Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
So that was much nicer. But I had he was already out at Fort Lewis. I had another year of school. And then I joined him after I graduated.
What did you graduate in?
I graduated in 1980, a year after he was commissioned. And then I moved out there, got a government job eventually because, thinking, okay, that'll move nicely with us. And then, let's see, I was out there a year, then we got married. And I think we left Fort Lewis in 83-ish. I think that sounds about right.
Yeah.
And, and I was under the old system, which was nice because it was that nice CRS or whatever they called it. Retirement was way different than, because I know you didn't pay Social Security at the time. And I thought, oh, that's going to move. Well, it moved okay to Georgia. It wasn't the ideal job, but they found some job for me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was considered a temporary job. And we were there, I think that was, I don't even remember how long we were there, 4-month advanced course program for Bill. And 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, they offered me a permanent position.
Oh.
And, that had come out to be a normal thing.
Yeah.
And so that was tough. I'd laugh because the majority of the longest period of work I've had was as a nurse, but that was when Bill retired.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't get that opportunity. We were every 2 to 4 years we were out, and it depended on where we were at, what I could do.
So you were in the government for most of those years because of that reallocation? Let's
see. Well, 80. And then he went to the Q course. I lived with friends in Alexandria, and I worked at it was called Darcom at the time, and now it was changed to Army Materials Command when I was there. And so I was there shortly until he finished the Q course, and then we moved up to Fort Devens, and I worked for the recruiting office, or the recruiting and retention, I think it was called. And I did that until I went to grad school, because I thought, okay, let's go to grad school, get an MBA. That might move nicely with us every time we move. So that was the choice there. And then I had to end government because they wanted me to move to work in the AG's office. And I was taking classes, and I think I might have been pregnant with Corey, for crying out loud. And I said, nope, not going to go work there. So then I dropped my military, my government career right there.
Oh, wow.
And then, I kind of bounced back because the next stop was Alaska. He was doing infantry stuff. And I worked for Army Community Services, ACS, and as a volunteer at first. And then they gave me the full-time position for the Consumer Affairs Financial Assistance Program Manager. So basically, working with a lot of soldiers and setting up budgets and working with creditors and all that kind of thing, which was huge in Alaska because it was expensive up there, probably still is. And of course, they gave me, eventually I got the full-time position, and a month later, we had to leave. And so he goes to grad school for 18 months. At Cornell, and the closest military installation is Seneca Army Depot, which was probably about 45 minutes away, and nobody's going to hire you for 18 months.
Yeah.
No matter who you are. So didn't do that, and then we were overseas.
A lot of what you're saying, it reminds me of when I was first looking at getting into the Royal Canadian Mounted Police up here, so our National Police Service, it's a paramilitary organization. When you get in there, at least at the time that I was getting in and prior to, you belong to the service. So it didn't matter what your spouse was doing, whatever they wanted and where they wanted you to go, you're going. And they reminded you of that quite a few times throughout training. And you signed a few pieces of paper that said, you understand you can go anywhere in Canada. But it's just kind of funny how you're saying, like, you have that relocation thing. So my wife, she's with the federal government, and it worked out nice because they have a spousal relocation. Issue with that is you usually have to be around a major center, so one of the bigger cities. If you're not, it might be tough getting a job. But when they move you, they guarantee you won't lose your job and you stay at your salary, but they can't guarantee you'll be in a job that is in your field. So on our first move, she got moved, no problem. They just signed some papers, but she goes from working in like marketing and management to accounting. She's like, I don't know anything about accounting. So she basically sat in an office for like a year and a half doing nothing, getting paid, bored out of her mind, which led to further moves down the road and why I'm with municipal service now. So it's very similar.
I can relate to that. Yes.
Yeah. So it's very cool to hear that it's the same kind of experience. Did you find when you're going through this, was it different based on, and John might have to help me with the terminology, with the commissioned officers and the non-commissioned and any spouses that you're interacting with? Is there a difference in how easy it is to move, how they're treated, anything like that?
I would say I don't recall any preferential treatment because Bill was an officer and ease of movement and stuff like that. Because we had a lot of wives enlisted and officer who their jobs transitioned nicely. And I was kind of jealous of that because their jobs transitioned. But there wasn't, preferential treatment. I don't think we had the spousal relocation program thoroughly in place until halfway through Bill's military career.
Oh, really?
Where they were given some preferences, yeah. And of course, then, coming over to Germany, I ran into hiring freezes. So I'm like, there I am.
Yeah.
But no, there wasn't too much difference that I recall.
Okay. When you're moving, did they usually take care of everything as well? Were they paying for the entire move?
Yeah. Yep. In fact, we really never saw a bill of lading of what they were charging the government for the moves, but they came in, packed it all up, moved it on out.
Yeah.
The last move was probably the easiest because it was a new program where they showed up with a container and all of your stuff went on this container. And then you had to have an address in the States at that time because we were coming from overseas. And we got there and our stuff showed up 2 days later, which coming overseas is really unheard of.
Yeah.
Usually you're waiting quite a long time. And some of it worked well for us. Some of our other friends who used it didn't work so well for them. So I don't know if that program is still in place, but I thought it was kind of cool because you even, they gave you the lock to put on your container and then you opened it when the things showed up at your house. So
okay.
It was, the moves were pretty smooth. There's horror stories everybody has about the moves, about packing garbage. If you forget to take the trash out, they throw it in a box kind of stuff. They'll wrap a piece of plastic with 6 sheets of paper, but then just pile the glasses on top. So we all have, moving horror stories, like a vacuum doesn't come off it was the last thing on because I wanted to vacuum before we closed the house up, and it was the last thing on the truck, and it's the first thing that never came off.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
weird stuff like that.
I'm kind of wondering, so how many times did you move? Do you know rough number how many times you've moved?
We're roughly, because Bill and I racked up a couple in-town moves at that first assignment. I think we moved like 3 times, and if not 4, within that 2.5, 3-year period that we were there. And but I'm somewhere around 14, I think I have.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I've moved like 3 times and I hate it.
I think I'm on the low end. Some of these guys, John, have bigger numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask, so with all the moves, I know how my kids handled it. How did your kids handle all of the moves and being uprooted and
Right. It was their life, so they didn't see anything abnormal about it. It was kind of like, oh, it's time to roll. And when we did move, when we were in the total civilian world, when Bill was doing ROTC, there were things about their life that people in our life that people just could not fathom. What, you're leaving? You've only been here a couple of years. And I'm like, well, that's the way it goes. And I think it was Bosnia time frame. And so we knew Bill was going back. We were going back to Germany, and Bill was probably going to be spending a lot of time there. And that just blew their minds. In fact, and then, the big rite of passage for our kids is their ID card.
Mm.
And when they turn 10, they get to get an ID card. And so we had to drive down to Omaha to get Corey's ID card. And she was so proud of that thing. And so she's talking to her friends at school and asking, well, did you guys get your ID cards? And they looked at her like, what? Like she had two heads. And she came home and was like, Mom, why isn't, Carly and Jamie getting ID cards? And I'm like, because their dads aren't in the military. They live here and will always live here, until they grow up. But that was, they kind of realized, wow, we are kind of different. I think at that time is when Corey started noticing it. They adjusted well with the school changes. I think, Corey changed 4 schools in the first 3 years she was in school, in formal education, from kindergarten to 3rd grade. And Ben, we knew, would be the one who would have a little more difficulty with school changes. So the goal was to, when he got to high school, let him, hopefully we'd be able to stay in one spot so he could get through high school. So,
Yeah.
And we did, it worked.
Do you have, when you started the journey and you think about your mindset then, and as opposed to what it might be now, or if you were to kind of guide somebody on what to expect now, do you think your outlook or your opinions have changed, or are you kind of the same mindset?
As far as the same mindset towards this lifestyle, yeah, it was a life, and we just did it. Most of the wives, we are a different breed. We're a strong-minded people who can handle everything. Once in a while you run into somebody who really was having a hard time with military lifestyle, and unfortunately that marriage usually didn't last, because you have to be a strong, independent person to do all this, because there's a lot of times you do it on your own. We had a move, I think, you remember, Germany the second time, I think, and Bill had to go over early, and I got stuck shipping the car and all the last minute stuff and traveling with the kids. And my mom just couldn't understand that. She sat there and cried, why are you doing this all by yourself? And I'm like, because it's what I have to do.
Yeah.
And so I do it.
I think I just feel like nowadays people have a real struggle with that. And maybe this is more on the Canadian side because we don't get involved in as many deployments and stuff, but people aren't gone for as long. I see it in the policing world. A lot of people, they might start with one police service, but generally they're looking to go back home, and then they're done, and that's it, and they don't have to move anymore. That was one of the recruiting issues that our national police service had, was because they say, like, you could go anywhere, and for a period,
right,
they weren't letting people go back to even their home province. So they're saying, you at least have to go the next province over. So you're 7 hours away or whatever it might be. And even that, people were struggling. I remember people crying. We had a few people cry when they found out their deployments. And I just remember that whole staffing situation. And I was thinking, you're still in Canada. It's like you can just drive home. It's not like you're overseas and you got to wait for a flight and it's going to be thousands of dollars. So it's just kind of the perspective. I feel like nowadays it might be a little tougher for people to realize that type of life. I don't know if you've ever run into that, or if you're still involved in any spouse groups or anything where maybe that's something that comes up. Have you ever seen that?
People are, yes. I mean, there are people who, we have never been close to Michigan. The closest duty assignment we had was when Bill was in grad school in New York. So, but because there is no place to go. in Michigan. It all depends on if there's a military post where that you can get back to,
Yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, and John, you know this about Fort Bragg, they can homestead there, because they can stay there for quite some time, and they'll pop to a different duty assignment. They'll come overseas to Germany, and then they'll bounce right back, and so they spend like their whole career there. So the kids and the wife and everything have established themselves as this is home. But I would say the majority of us, not so much,
Hmm.
and retirement is the only thing that has brought a lot of people back to their home states, if that's what they choose to do.
Okay.
Because, yeah, it's not, unless you happen to be from a state where there's a military post and in your specific branch of the service and branch of the Army, for that matter, you're limited with special forces over here.
Yeah.
It's only a couple.
Did you usually live on base? Was that always an option for you?
Yes, we mostly did if we could.
Is there a reason?
Well, one, it was cheaper to live on post, and it was just more convenient, and then in Germany, that was kind of a given.
Yeah.
We spent 6 years over there, so that was a given to live on post. And it was just easier with the school and the kids and that kind of thing. Where we didn't have an option, we had to buy a house or rent, which, that's always a nightmare in itself every time you have to go through that mess. But we only lived on post, I think, in Fort Devens and Germany. They were the only two.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, where we had availability. And that's a whole game too, the availability issue when you come into housing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're waiting forever, and and going over to Germany, it was an issue because we were going over when the mass exodus was coming back with the drawdowns and everything in 91. I think that's when we headed over.
Yep. Did you find so, and kind of what I'm getting at with like living on base and then the closeness of people, did you find the support system, if there are other spouses or even just from the military side, did you find the support system was available? Was there even one, I guess, to begin with? Because maybe back in the 80s, it wasn't a thing compared to what you might find nowadays. So what was that experience like?
Oh, it was definitely there when you were on post, and it was organized within the different units, like within the battalion, within the company. There were support systems. I don't know if we were called FRGs, family readiness groups, at the time, but it was there. It was taken on by the battalion commander's wife, the company commanders, and then the team leaders' wives and stuff like that. And so there, it was the trickle down effect where if there was information to be dispersed, it would come on down, and then we would have to contact all the teams, wives and stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it was there. I mean, you always could find the help, within the unit. Not that organized thing that somebody's being paid on post to be the FRG point of contact for everybody, no matter who they are,
Oh, okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking, if you're doing all the stuff like moving all the vehicles and the kids and by yourself, but do you have some people who can help out or guide you if you have questions of any kind? I imagine that's
Well, we used the same things Bill would have, and the biggest thing we had was a power of attorney to get all this stuff done.
oh yeah,
So yeah, we just a lot of it was organizing it, and then you submitted everything to the government once you got there. As far as like the moving of the shipping of the car, all that, we pretty much organized that, and then we submitted the bill of lading from the car shipping people to the government when you put in all your paperwork after the move. So now you just kind of did it. I don't remember why I knew what to do, but like I said, the power of attorney was the best thing going.
yeah. I find it's always interesting when you think people look at it from the outside and they might go maybe a similar experience that your mom had. It's like, why the hell are you choosing to do all this? But when you're in it and you just kind of do it day by day and step by step, it's not such a monstrous task to take on. And I think that's kind of like even John, some of the stuff you would do in your job. If you look at it as one giant task, yeah, it's going to seem insurmountable. But when you're just in it and you kind of go day by day, it's a lot easier to take little chunks of it out and you just kind of keep moving along. I imagine that's how the experience is if you look back at it now.
Oh yeah, the thing is, it's like when you look at the assignment to Germany. I mean, 10th Special Forces Group has been in Germany literally since 1953,
Hmm.
and I mean, you get a bunch of people there that I mean, they've been there for people serve their entire career uh, in that assignment. So when Kathy was talking about putting stuff together and dealing with stuff, the first thing that popped into my mind is when you move. So when you move to Germany, uh, one of the first things you have to do is you have to get a collection of transformers for all of your American appliances
All
because
the plugs.
you know
Yeah.
because the German plugs, they other than the shape, they also serve up 220 volts.
Hmm.
So
There are 110, yeah.
yeah. So the first time you walk into somebody's quarters, there's all these little boxes that everything is plugged into. And basically, what's developed over the decades is that there's no sense in you bringing them back to the United States. So they're literally handed down from you get in there and it's like hey, so and so just moved back to Fort Bragg or Fort Devens, and we have their transformers, okay, and then it's like you go ahead and plug them in and pick it up, and then you just pay it forward when you leave.
Hmm.
You, when you leave as a veteran of living in Germany, then the next person coming in, you give them your transformers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's, I think, how we got ours. Somebody just passed them on down who was leaving, and
Right.
then, getting there was always a hundred wives who knew what you needed. And so they were like, do you guys need this? Do you guys need that? Yeah, it was never,
Yeah, they give you the checklist.
yep, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not a continuous thing. I mean, it's like, yeah, something comes up, you deal with it, and then you like forget, hey, whatever our dishwasher is plugged into a transformer. I mean, you forget about it for the next 3 years of your assignment if that's how long you're there, and then you're just dealing with all the other stuff.
Kathy, did you have any other things that kind of came up or experiences while you were deployed to like any different countries? Maybe Germany is the most common one, but you know, did you are you able to go out in the community, interact, go to the local shops, like anything like that?
Oh, we interacted, but our first assignment over there, it was when we were the welcoming committee into Stuttgart after every bill signed in, and we turned around and came right up to Stuttgart because this is when they were moving out of Bad Tolls, and we were divided all over the place, and we landed in a town called Ludwigsburg, which was just like 8 sets of quarters in a square, and we had a restaurant on one corner, we had a bakery on the other corner, and we were within walking distance to the downtown Ludwigsburg shopping area. We could walk to the castle in Ludwigsburg.
Oh
So
wow.
we got out and about a lot.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about that earlier, that the wives traveled. We went, I can't tell you how many times we went into Poland on that shopping trip,
Oh really? Okay.
and yeah, we traveled a lot. They would organize groups and off we go. Or the USO had groups too, because we got to the Czech Republic to go crystal shopping. Shopping is a theme here when you're in Europe, because you're doing a lot of that. But no, we traveled a lot. So of course, if the guys were gone, it was a little bit tougher to do. But as just the women's group. But yeah, it wasn't an issue traveling.
Yeah.
And The kids enjoyed it. We got them, the second tour over was easier because they were older. So we got them all over the place.
Yeah.
They went with the high school, the youth group there went to Ibiza for spring break. We think about that now and go, we sent our, college or high school freshmen to Ibiza for spring break. And I'm like, I've seen that show. I can't believe we did that. And the youth group on post at Patch, they had where'd those kids go? They went to Mallorca or somewhere, or Malta. They took all the kids went off to Malta, and I'm like, okay, go guys, have fun. They go skiing, yeah.
When some people talk about that, like for kids, it's like, well, moving them around might be hard, but I think some of the experiences you could get are going to be second to none, and you get some real unique life experience. So, and that just adds to the character and type of person you are down the road. I think it makes you a better person in a lot of ways, as long as obviously you still got some stability at home and that type of stuff. But the ability to go out and travel, especially at those ages, I mean, nobody else is going to get to do that.
Right.
So,
and to this day, as adults, they are travelers.
Yeah.
They have no qualms going here, there, or anywhere. Mm-hmm. And they're very, especially Corey, but her job took her into Africa a lot and stuff like that too.
Oh, really?
And she worked for AFRICOM for a while as an adult.
Are both your kids, are they involved with the military?
No, Corey's been a contractor. After she finished grad school, she worked for Booz Allen for a while. And then, and with that company, they sent her to AFRICOM while we were still living in Florida. And so she did a lot of trips into Africa, and interesting stuff, because I didn't realize there were so many women military in Africa, because she did a lot of the, they call it gender peace and security or something at the time, or women peace and security.
Okay.
And so it was kind of interesting, but she's a serious traveler and has no qualms about packing it up and moving on out. It's just part of her fabric, of what she does and what she did growing up. Ben, he'll travel. He travels, they're always planning a trip overseas, even now after kids, because, we're here to babysit. So it's a different game. They travel, we stay home and watch grandkids, And so, but it was a great experience. They getting on those trains, going downtown, that was their jam. They loved it. The independence they had. Ben just got to the age where he could do that, where I'd let him go during the day and come with friends. And there was some kind of skateboarding down there that they were all into, and some tunnels somewhere. I don't know where it was. But just as he got into that freedom, we moved back to the States and it was gone. So he was kind of disappointed about that. But they had a unique life and unique perspective on it all, really.
Yeah. I was going to say your experience now, though, like traveling with grandkids, you get to go do all the Disney cruises or go to Disney World.
And after living in Florida for 9 years, when Bill was at SOCOM, we went to Disney so many times. Everybody who came down wanted to go to Disney or Universal.
Been there, done that.
I know they got a long range plan when the kids are older to go. And I'm like, okay, I guess we can gut it out one more time and go with them to Disney.
I'm wondering about, for you, keeping in touch. So obviously you're doing a lot of the traveling with Bill, but is he gone for large segments of time where, you are just able to do phone calls, or you're not even able to make contact at all?
During that time frame, when he was in the service, when we were in Germany and he was running all over the place, no, there wasn't a lot of contact back then. We, of course, we didn't have the technology for that. Life would have been really easy if we had the technology, even with support amongst all the other wives and keeping in touch with them to make sure everybody's doing okay, to be able to have this big, email chain or a group text or something like that. So if anybody had issues, they could get a hold of you and everybody else at the same time. But there wasn't a lot of contact. There was every once in a while you get a phone call, but if you happen not to be home, well, you didn't get that phone call.
Wow.
So the contact wasn't great. You remember, John, I don't remember you guys calling in much and checking in. It depended on how long you were gone too.
Right.
And the length of the deployment and stuff like that. And of course, where you went. The kids, that was another one we talk and laugh about all the time too, is it must have been 2.0, because I can't believe my second grader would have said this, but Bill left in the middle of the night with sock gear. I can't remember where he was going, but kids got up for school. I said, where's Dad? I'm like, he had to leave last night. And Corey, I'm not surprised, comes up with, well, what third world country shit the bed this time? And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, well, you're listening way too much to conversations in this house,
Well, actually, on that, maybe how did you deal with any danger? Did you have an idea of where he might be going? And, does he ever tell you stories and you're like, what the hell? I don't want to know that.
Well, you know what? I always told him, I said, one of these days when you retire, we're going to take a walk in the woods and you're going to tell me things that I have questions about, but we didn't know. I mean, okay, we'd look in the paper and kind of try to guess, where they were, what they were doing by some of the headlines and everything. But other than that, no, we didn't really know, and you didn't really think about it. And, until afterwards when it was all released, if it was,
Yeah.
And I never really thought about the danger, because that was their job. And they're a unique group of guys with a really good skill set that, they looked out. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
I never felt insecure about him going off.
Did you ever have any friends or other spouses that you knew of that, had to deal with losing somebody, or they're coming back with any major injuries?
Not so much the injuries. We did lose just on a regular training mission, Tony, John.
Yeah. Tony Hernandez. He was off on my old team.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but at that time, it was usually a training accident is what we were dealing with. And because I don't recall any other fatalities on deployments during that time. Yeah.
So you've managed to not have to, it's good that you don't have to deal with that too often. It's not in the middle of active conflict all the time. Right.
There wasn't that's a whole different game. When all of that started up, that's a whole different game of what you're dealing with then.
Yeah.
John and I were talking when we were together in May, that, I noticed when we went back to Germany and to visit Corey when she was over there, we went back to Panzer where we were all stationed, and the place, as far as the housing and stuff, was very deserted. And I said, I think with this op tempo that these guys have had, a lot of the wives and the kids went back home and to get the support to be with their families and stuff like that, because they're gone for a longer duration.
Okay.
And so, that kind of takes some of that pressure off of taking care of everybody who's left behind, kind of deal, because a lot of them did go home where we were always there,
Yeah.
For most of them. I think your wife went home, didn't she, John?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she took the kids and went back, because we had A and B company that was providing security. This is when Charlie company deployed to Desert Storm, and A and B company was maintaining security, and she took the boys and went back to the States.
Yeah, for that duration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but most of us at the time stayed put just because of the kids and the school situation.
Okay.
Not having to switch schools and go through all that. If you were going back to a school where the kids knew somebody already, that was easier to do. But if you were going back by family and that wasn't where they were, and then they have to start that process all over again. He just didn't want to do that. So,
Okay.
Yeah, it was extremely tough on the wives and I mean just the families. And it's like my Kathy, because being in Charlie Company, it's like it was actually a special mission that was classified at the time and only became declassified in the last few years. And I always regretted not being able to tell Susan what I actually did. But it's like one of her favorite stories, and Kathy can relate to this. My dad was visiting us in Germany, and one day I came home from work, came in, took off my jacket, sat down to dinner, and we didn't have cell phones. We had these pagers, and the pager goes off, and I look at the code, and it's like call a number, and I go uh-huh. I hang up, and I put my jacket back on, kiss my wife goodbye, and I walk out the door. And she told me later that my dad goes, "Where's he going?" She goes, "I don't know, but the last time this happened, he was gone for 3 weeks." And that was that. Yeah, so I knew that Kathy would be able to relate to this because it was one of these things. I mean, you'd get a call, or the pager would go off in the middle of the night, and we would like go somewhere, and it's like more often than not it would be a no notice training exercise because we did those constantly, and then other times we would be going to some foreign country, some other country, and like doing something for real.
Hmm.
yeah, so it was, the pager would go out. I forgot about those pagers, John. You're right. And that thing would buzz. They'd make a phone call, and then, and it was the and off they go. And when we were in Ludwigsburg, we were all together. We had to laugh because the other people in our little development, when special forces people were coming up, they were very nervous because they've heard so many stories about special forces soldiers, and they're like, "Oh, we have to lock our bikes. Oh, they're going to come after our wives." I mean, the folklore was phenomenal.
Really?
With special forces, and so when we'd be outside with the kids and we'd all be sitting around talking, and then the kids are playing, nobody else would come outside. They would not come out because we invite them out. We're having a barbecue, whatever, come out. They wouldn't come out. And so we thought that was kind of hysterical until like after about a year, somebody said, "You guys aren't so bad." And I'm like, "You guys aren't so bad." I'm like, "Well," and then they filled us in on what they heard.
Yeah.
And everything. But we were all together one day, and I think we were doing, I don't know, playing cards, and the pagers all went off, and they kind of went off in a sequence because it wasn't all at the same time. It went almost one at a time.
Oh.
And then they were gone in 10 minutes, and we all sat there looking at each other and went, "Okay, anybody want another glass of wine?" That was, I forgot about pagers, John. You're right.
Out of all your time in these experiences, do you have anywhere that is the most memorable? Like it sounds like you've been to a lot of unique places. Obviously, Germany, you're kind of based out of, and you're able to kind of branch out from there
Mhm.
and do some traveling. But like you've been to Alaska, I don't think that's a common experience for people. But anywhere that stands out in particular, any experiences in particular?
I get this question asked a lot. Where was your favorite place that you lived? What was the best one? And, every time that we would move, we'd always go in with some trepidation how this was going to be. Like when we got assigned to, ROTC at South Dakota, University of South Dakota, we thought, "Oh, what in the world is this going to be?" But it wasn't uniquely the place. Of course, Germany had its pluses, but it was the people we were with that really made the difference for every one of those assignments. We came out with lots, friends and great acquaintances and stuff like that from the assignments.
Yeah.
You can't, in the civilian world, you don't get that,
Yeah.
and so it makes Christmas cards a little tough because, they're far and wide. And John is one of the best and the first Christmas card to come in, I must say.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so our stuff goes far and wide. But yeah, that's the best part, I would say, has been the people, because we've met some great people along the way.
I imagine you got to be a people person because you're traveling and you're interacting with individuals from all over the world, right? So you kind of have
Yeah.
to be able to adapt to their lifestyle or their personality.
Yeah, it's you have to have a little bit more of an extrovert personality. In fact, we have friends coming in tomorrow we haven't seen in 30 some years,
Oh, wow.
but we were stationed at Fort Devens together. And then the last time we saw him, when Bill was at grad school, he was at West Point teaching or attack or whatever they do at that time. And we ran into him down there. And that's the last time I've seen him. Bill's seen him at this get together they do in Northern Virginia every year. And so, yeah, I finally get to see his wife, Jan, who I haven't seen in 30 some years.
Very cool.
But yeah, so it's pretty far and wide.
You're right, though. Like, I don't know of anybody that, out of my family and my friends that see people that 30 years later, they're going to really just pick up and keep talking like they were friends who never lost touch. I
That's
think
true.
that's something that's
That's true.
very unique to military and policing culture, maybe first responders in general, because you have a lot more of those shared experiences, and right from training to family situations, whatever it might be, but you have a lot more in common, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, true. I mean, and John, when we had our first reunion, the Charlie Company reunion, there were so many, you just picked up right where you left off, the conversations, you caught up and off you went.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a very common thing. You keep talking about policing and I'm thinking, gee, I came from a police family because that's what my dad did.
Oh, really?
And his brother, and then my mom's brother, and then my cousins. And so yeah,
Okay.
we're a big long blue line in my family.
So you have that service, yeah, you have the service background. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I think that just lends to you're a little more comfortable when we were kind of talking at the beginning about the expectations and the unknown. And, with police, sure, you're home at the end of the day, but sometimes you go out and, your spouse, your kids, they don't know if you're going to come home, and there is danger involved with that
Mhm.
job. So similar threads, I guess.
Yeah. Very possible. Yeah, that's true. You don't think about that as a kid,
Mm.
but it's there, and it has gotten, as the world has gotten more crazier, the area I grew up in, and my dad, the police department he was with, they've lost policemen for various things because the crime rate has gotten kind of hinky out there. So yeah, but as kids, you don't think of it, and I'm sure the kids didn't think about, Bill taking off and anything happening at that time.
Mhm.
You don't think that way when you're a kid. So, they look back at it now probably and go, yeah.
When you're a kid, the impression I have with mine is they just think you're the biggest, strongest, smartest person on the planet. They're like, nothing can happen to you. So
Until they're teenagers. Until they're
Yeah,
teenagers, then you're not the
yes.
biggest and smartest and strongest. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things, just as we kind of come up to the end of the time, is I wanted to ask, what was transitioning to civilian life like? I imagine you still keep busy. Oh, sorry, John, you want to ask something?
Yeah, if I could just go back to Panzer Concern for a bit, when Kathy's referring to Patch and Panzer, there were the German communities that we were staying at. It's kind of like think in terms of Fort Panzer or something like that. But the one thing I wanted to ask, so during your tenure at Germany, Bill became Charlie Company commander.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you what it was like becoming the commander's wife for a unit like Charlie Company, especially with the deployments and what your basically what your role was, because it's like whatever you had you had your job, you had your kids, but then what else was on your plate being married to the Charlie Company commander?
Yeah. There was, we moved, they shut down that really nice place in Ludwigsburg, and we all had to move. And everybody was mad at us because they all went to Robinson Barracks, which is another housing area. They all went there, but we came down to Panzer because I said, you've got Charlie Company now. It's going to be way easier if we're on Panzer. And we probably lost 900 square feet of living space, but it did work out easier for him. But, your eyes are, you're always looking, and you're always talking. I spent a lot of time talking to, otherwise making sure everything's going okay for everybody. And they would call if there was some issues that we had, and we did have some issues that were interesting. But yeah, you're more of a contact, and you're looking out for everybody. That was a lot of it, John, is, making phone calls, calling the team leaders' wives, asking them, please disseminate this information if you got some stuff, so you wouldn't have to make, 40 separate phone calls. But like I said, technology would have made that job a lot easier as far as getting in touch with everybody. But most of the wives were pretty self-sufficient, and they took care of the team wives. They took care of each other, but then they also took care of the people who weren't in the company in their stairwell, because we lived in these apartments. In these stairwells, there was like 6 different apartments. So you took care of everybody who was in your, everybody really pitched in well with that group. Now, working within infantry companies, when Bill was an infantry company commander, which is the regular Army, that was a whole different ballgame. That was not as much fun. Just because there was they viewed a much more distinct difference between officer and enlisted than they do in special forces. We all just kind of mushed together with special forces. And, but yeah, they viewed there was a different view. And so, I've been called a bitch. I've been called all kinds of things to people I had never even talked to.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, that was mainly the job. I knew what was coming, so it wasn't too bad.
On that, I was gonna kind of transition into the civilian life. Like, so when when Bill's looking at retiring, have you found things have slowed down a bit, or you just finding other things to keep you super busy?
Well, he retired, and we had kids in high school and heading off to college, so that wasn't really retired. And you'll hear us talk about being retired, because you retire the first time from the military and then retire the second time. And that's when I actually got to nursing school, because I knew we were going to be in one place. I started out as an EMT in South Dakota, and then I actually did that work in Germany because I did paramed physicals for an insurance guy.
Okay.
An American guy financial planner who had insurance packages, and I'd have to go in and send all this stuff to the company for people who were buying insurance. And then came back, and I was going to get my paramedics license back and stuff. And Bill ran into a fire captain picking up pizza. And he was telling him what my plan was. And he goes, tell her to go to nursing school, because I got pages of paramedics wanting to, looking for jobs. And so that's how I ended up in nursing school and in the emergency department and all that fun stuff there.
Oh, really?
And and then I worked, down in Yorktown, Virginia, until they moved again when we weren't supposed to. And we moved down to Florida.
How many years did you do?
I was like 9 years. And we got down there, and because, the government, when they move you as a civilian, you have to count your move as income. I said, I'm not going to work this year because the taxes will be too much. Well, so I worked on my golf game.
Yeah.
And so we're about 2 years out, and Bill goes, "Are you going to go back to work?" And I'm like, "Well," and he's like, "Okay, better question. You have to?" I'm like, "Nope, we're good." So I just did, on the side kind of stuff, really. I still carry a license, and I have license in Virginia. And so I get a lot of phone calls from neighbors and stuff when they have issues going on or questions about a surgery or something. Yeah. So, but retirement, no, it's not slow. Retirement wasn't slow. Retirement is not slow either. Because now we get to golf together. Of course, we've discovered pickleball. And yeah, there's just a lot. And, of course, with the grandkids coming in all the time, when you live someplace that they want to come to, yeah, there it is.
Do you find that you and Bill are still into traveling, or are you kind of like, you know what, I'm good with like maybe once a year we drive somewhere?
Oh, yeah. Well, we still travel. I mean, and it's because friends invite us and say, "Hey, we're going here." And we've done the river cruises, but it was funny. The first one we did was Paris to Prague, and we were there at most of those places already. So, Bill and I would walk around looking for a good, restaurant. And because the food is so good over there. Yeah, as far as big trips, we've traveled so much, and we always laugh about it's nice when we're home for a whole month because we're still traveling. We visited friends in Georgia, Florida. We just took a trip to Tennessee for a big birthday celebration. Of course, the back and forth to Michigan, because that's only about 9-10 hours away. So yes, we're still traveling, and we do relish the times when we're actually home. Like the month of November, I think we're home.
Yeah.
The whole month. So.
And are the kids nearby? Or are they?
Yeah, we have Corey and her family and husband are up in DC, and my son is in Richmond and his family.
Okay.
So they're about, DC is about an hour and a half away when you have the hot lanes coming out of, which are the high occupancy lanes. Then they can get down here in like an hour or hour and 40 minutes. And then it's just an hour for the other one.
John and I were talking about this yesterday, just about some of the interstate system. And I was saying how nice it is traveling in the US, like just doing road trips, because, it's built for that. Whereas in Canada, we have one, like most of our cities are along the border. So you're basically just going east-west, and it's one highway, and that's it. And there's also not a lot of truck stops up here. So you basically just bounce from town to town. If you don't, if you don't pull off the highway, there's not much in between. Whereas in the US, like you get these truck stops and they're like a whole supermarket. There's restaurants and they're super clean.
Oh, you heard of Buc-ee's?
Yeah. I just find everything about it, all the travel down there is just nice. And I mean, the interstates in some places are like 8 lanes wide and you're flying. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's pretty good. It just brings us kind of to the end of our time. I want to say I appreciate you very much for being willing to do this and come on the show. We had a few people say no, and that's totally fine. I know some people get either nervous or they just don't feel like sharing, but I really do appreciate you being able to come on here and talk a little bit about your life and the family and the experiences that you had. So I want to say thank you.
I hope it was something of substance.
This was a terrific idea. And, because basically it's one of these things where just about as long as I've known him, it's like Bill chalks up a lot of his success to having you in his corner. And I completely understand why. So I personally appreciate you, helping me out with, because all Nathan does is give me a mission type order of, hey, find a military spouse that we can interview. And I'm like, okay. So
no, but it is really nice to get some of the different perspectives on here. So yeah, thank you again. And
I think it's the first time anybody's asked us for our perspective, actually,
yeah, well, we'll have to do some more.
It's volunteered a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We had a group in Germany, John, I don't remember if it was called American Women's Activity. It's called AWAG, Americans Women's Activity of Germany. And that was the only time, and it was everybody, all the units in Germany and Italy. And the women would get together at this big conference somewhere. And that was the first time I think they ran a survey on concerns and all this kind of stuff that family and wives had.
Oh, wow.
So I think that was, yeah. I forgot about those guys, but yeah, that's what they did. I don't know if they're still in existence, but.
Well, it's been too far in between then. So,
yeah.
And we'll have to think about something for, maybe that's something for next year. We'll have to look at something around that. So that's your next mission, John.
Either that or the kids, John. You'll have to because their perspective is way different too.
Yeah.
You'll have to get one of the kids.
We're gonna remember you said that, okay? So first we have Bill, then you. So now we're gonna have Corey and Ben on. So
there you go.
We'll just do the saga of the Fleser family.
I know, really.
I'll wrap the recording there. Hang on the line for just a few moments, but we'll chat offline. So thank you very much for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to do it.
Hey everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.